Book club, woo!
Book club.
All right. I have again once more highlighted everything on my tablet and not moved it over to my computer, even though I totally could have been doing that while we were just talking now, but I was listening. I was being mindful of what Des was saying.
Good.
So, I did not highlight
Which is like
them.
a whole chunk of of chapter 12.
And actually, I didn't highlight this because I don't like to highlight huge chunks, but this the start of this chapter actually is a really good summation of the whole point of the entire thing.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a good maybe this is a good way to outline it. And should I read it? Should
Yeah.
we read this?
Yeah,
Okay.
read it to Max.
Okay, Max. The chapter starts. Quote, aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others, I am committed to cultivating loving speech and deep listening in order to bring joy and happiness to others and relieve others of their suffering. Knowing that words can create happiness or suffering, I am determined to speak truthfully, with words that inspire self-confidence, joy, and hope. I will not spread news that I do not know to be certain, and will not criticize or condemn things of which I am not sure. I will refrain from uttering words that can cause division or discord, or that can cause the family or the community to break. I am determined to make all efforts to reconcile and resolve all conflicts, however small. This is the fourth mindfulness training, and it offers a very good description of right speech. So that's basically the first page here, and that's a very good outline of like that's the whole chapter basically. This is what we talk about the whole time. There's all of these different aspects of right speech.
I had a chunk of that highlighted as well. It was very good.
I'm sad we don't have more people in here listening to this because I feel like there's a few people who might benefit.
Everyone might benefit.
We all
What do you
benefit.
mean?
I will say, as always, as I'm reading, I'm often reflecting on how applicable this practice is to just my job. Even if I like discount all other aspects, bringing a lot of this practice to my work is really important. I think to me being a good teacher, the patience, the coming with right speech to my students and starting with right thinking, so that I'm not pre-writing their script for them, has been very important as I work through stuff. Just as a fun fact.
You get so uncomfortable when you stop talking and you're silent.
Yeah, let's get back to having a couple seconds of just like let it sink in. It's okay for quiet. It doesn't mean that your thing you said was bad. I think it's a really good point actually. It's a different way to communicate, isn't it? When you have to try to make them understand how to do something that maybe an adult already should know.
Yeah.
And feels maybe unnatural too, I would imagine. But that's knowing your audience, right?
Yeah.
Actually, there's a bit later that I think we can bring that back when we get there. But I think it's like a few pages down the line. I liked in the second page. Oh yeah, he has a classic explanation of right speech being speak truthfully. Don't say one thing to one person and something else to a different person, and don't speak cruelly. And when he said, when we say something poisonous, it's usually because of our habit energies, so bringing that back in. Our words are very powerful. They can give someone a complex, take away their purpose in life, or even drive them to suicide. We must not forget this. That the words, like, no matter what we do, the words can do so much and affect so much change in the world and in other people. Kind of the reason behind, like, why we should be paying attention to all of this is that they do have the power to do that.
Is it important? Yes. Good.
Sorry, Max, the
Yeah.
audio quality's a bit off. I couldn't understand what you said.
Oh, I said because it's important. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Good.
Yes.
Well, and then like with this, like I was saying earlier, the emphasis on that right speech starts with right thinking. And it's not enough to try to pay attention to the words coming out of your mouth, but the words that you're repeating in your mind silently, you know? I think it's really easy to put on a face for my students, but if I'm in my mind constantly going, calling them names or being really aggravated with them all the time, that's going to feed into and water the wrong seeds as he puts it. And so I find that this is one of my weak points of transforming my thinking to right thinking, so that those actions aren't something I have to be mindful of because they're going to naturally spring from the right thinking. Yeah.
It is difficult to retrain the mind, especially with things like just what you tell yourself, because most of the time I don't even recognize that's what I'm doing. That's just thoughts, you know.
In other words, you aren't being mindful about your thinking, and then
Yeah.
it's taking over the habit energy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Dun
Speaks
dun
the
dun.
Uh-huh. Which actually brings us to this next part I had highlighted. The practice of right speech is to try to change our habits so that our speech arises from the seed of Buddha that is in us and not from our unresolved, unwholesome seeds. So we must be careful. And that immediately after that, right speech is based on right thinking. But when we have a thought, right speech is a way that makes our thoughts not private anymore. You're letting people into those thoughts that are inside of your head. And so we have to take great care that the thoughts are also right thoughts. He said sometimes when there are blocks of suffering in us, they may manifest as speech or actions without going through the medium of thought. And that's something also we should caution against. To be mindful of what we're saying, to be sure that it is actually what we intend and that it's bringing about the right kinds of effects on the world around us and not be something that we regret later.
Yeah, on this page, just below there, is where I really pulled the seeds quote. He says, "To water seeds of peace in ourselves, we have to practice right mindfulness while walking, sitting, standing, and so on." Just that idea that in every aspect of my life, I need to be watering the proper seeds and not just in one specific area.
Yeah, not just when you talk to your students and they're irritating you.
Although then too.
Yes, that included. Yeah, we have to do all of these things all of the time, basically, right? Lots of things. But it does become easier, right? Once you have one, it kind of leads to the next and the next and the next. And
Right.
we can't have right speech without right thinking, without right mindfulness, without right view. It doesn't exist. Once you get one, though, it kind of naturally flows. This next page this really stood out to me. I think in one of his other books I read something where he was talking about the same topic, and I remember there were some quotes from that I pulled out as well. So this topic resonates a lot for me, is that deep listening is at the foundation of right speech. If we cannot listen mindfully, we cannot practice right speech. Because no matter what we say, it will not be mindful, because we'll be speaking only our own ideas and not in response to the other person. so we're not truly present if we're not listening. And that he also talks about compassionate listening brings about healing. When someone listens to us this way, we feel some relief right away. Even just the act of listening without any speech at all afterward, without anything beyond that, already sets in motion the healing for the other person. Or when someone listens to us, then it gives us the opportunity to heal as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I highlighted some similar stuff on the page.
Yeah, heal the people we love and restore communication with them. This is...
I will say I resonated highly with the sentence near the bottom where it says, we listen with our whole being, we can diffuse a lot of bombs. Because
Yeah.
that's exactly how it feels sometimes navigating my students, is that I'm having to diffuse situations constantly. Because they're going through a hard time in their lives. You know, it's an emotional, hormonal time. And I have to be careful not to trip a wire.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, the sentence right before that as well. Without judging or reacting.
Yep. And that's really, really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My goodness,
But...
is it difficult not to judge or react when somebody's yelling at you?
Yeah. But if we are, by extension then, if we are judging or reacting, then we are not really compassionate listening. Right? If we reword this, rearrange how that's listed, we aren't truly listening with our whole being if we're then taking that information before we've received all the information and making a judgment or reacting to it. We need to slow down.
True. It's all true.
It's all true.
Mindfulness all the way down.
Yeah, he continued that onto a few pages too, because in this page as well, it had, if you really love someone, train yourself to be a listener.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about in many families and with a lot of people, we can't listen to each other anymore, and we try to seek outside help like a therapist. But sometimes the therapist also has problems, and they are suffering, and they can't always listen as deeply as we need either. So the best thing you can do if you love somebody is to try to take care of this, to learn how to listen better, and that you must train yourself in the art of deep, compassionate listening.
You know, that's real because it's definitely a skill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really appreciate that wording of it too, to see it as an art. That's
Right.
something that you can't just do it well right away. Just because you know this doesn't mean you can just practice it and be great at it. Like with any other kind of actual art, you can't just pick it up the first time and be fantastic at it, right? We have to learn the techniques, we have to practice, we have to get all the little subtle, tiny little details correct before it finally looks like what we intended and is effective. Actually, at the bottom of the page too, where he says, if you fail in this training, you cannot succeed in restoring harmony, love, and happiness. It's so important.
Yeah.
You're doomed without it.
Doomed.
But I think it's still true. Let's see, the last bit. If you suffer so much and no one has been able to listen to your suffering will remain there. But if someone is able to listen to you and understand you, you will feel relief after 1 hour of being together. Oh wow, I didn't realize this was the whole chapter is about this, basically.
It is. It really hits home with this. I do like how in a couple pages later he does emphasize that if you find you're not in a place to listen appropriately, you should address that with whomever you're talking with. And he says to say something like, "Dear one, can we continue in a few days? I need to renew myself. I need to practice so I can listen to you in the best way I can."
Yep. You have to practice in such a way that every time the energy of irritation and anger comes up, you can breathe in and out mindfully and continue to hold compassion within you. And that, yeah, that I love every time that he has a little sentence like that.
Mm-hmm.
Dear friend, dear so and so. Yeah, that we have to really take care of ourselves, like mentally and physically. We have to meditate more. We have to take care of our sleep and our bodies, and then we can perform at this level that we need to. That's so critical for this to actually work.
And on that next page, things like, "I'm not at my best today. I'm afraid I'll say things that are unkind." And I find myself having to stop many times to not say unkind things. That habit energy I'm still carrying around from unfun events from my youth. And I haven't quite let go of. And so I carry that still, those reactions and those, as he puts it, habits. And I think about that and have to stop myself a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I like where he gets into the Lotus Sutra down below that, and we often need to change the tools we're using to communicate. He says for someone who needed the language of music, he used music, etc., right? And so changing your language and recognizing that not all ways of speaking are appropriate at all times, I guess. I think about the bottleneck of understanding that occurs when we use certain vocabulary. Sometimes I use it a little petty revenge with my students. I use a higher level of vocabulary than I know they're capable of understanding just to prove a point. But beyond that, when we get too specific, I think sometimes with the Dharma, right? Like there's a lot of words like Dharma in of itself. What is the Lotus Sutra? What is a Bodhisattva? These are words I think we take for granted as far as our understanding of them when talking to people, especially new people.
Yeah, I try not to use those words because I know that anything that's not in English, right? People are already going to be like, what the heck are you talking about?
Yeah. I've had a friend who's been very intrigued by some stuff and wanted to know more about my practice or practice in general. And so it's been interesting to try to be really mindful in the way I speak and not take for granted any understanding, right? So, like you said, try not to use those words. Because I don't know what they know.
Which is very, I mean, that's what this whole bit you just pointed out was about, right? Somebody needs this information, but there are different ways you can convey the information, and the right one is the one that they can receive. If they can't actually receive that, you didn't send any actual message, did you?
Right.
Actually, there was a quote up here that was that, "Before you speak, understand the person you are speaking to. Consider each word carefully before you say anything so your speech is right in both form and content."
Yes.
So it's not just communicating accurately what's inside of yourself, but also someone has to receive that communication on the other side, and it's going to get distorted if we send it out the wrong way. No matter how accurate.
To finally step away from my relationship with my students and use my my partner, my romantic partner. I often sometimes, if there's something that's frustrating me, I have to think not only in the moment of like, am I able to step back from my emotions so that I can deliver this in a kind and patient manner, but is he in a place to receive it? And this sometimes can be a difficult jungle gym, right? of being aware of how, like you said, is the person in a right place for that form and content.
Yeah, are they at their best today? Are they in a place where they will say things that are unkind or assume things that are unkind from what you said too, right? People taking it personally when it's not meant to be.
If there's one thing I tend to take for granted, it is in fact that my partner does not tend to take things as personally as a lot of people.
Yeah. He's good for that.
He's pretty good at that. Max knows him. Sorry.
Well, I will trust since both of you have said it.
Max has the honor of playing games with my husband. My husband DMs groups.
Ah. Yeah, that's definitely a dynamic that happens when you play tabletop.
But he's pretty good about not taking things personally. Things like his players do, or in character actions, like they're completely separate in his mind. So that's nice.
So he's a very, very good role player.
He is. Additionally, I will say, as far as relationship goes, he's really good, I think, at separating the fact that I might come at him when I'm grumpy, I'm hungry, or I haven't slept well. And sometimes I'm very angry, and he realizes that. And so he kind of looks more at the content of what I've said rather than how I've said it. And that doesn't,
Oh, bless him.
That doesn't negate that I need to be better about how I'm saying things.
But it does make for more effective communication.
But it does clear up some of what would be a bad communication, yes.
Would that all people could do that.
Yeah.
If only.
Right?
Yeah, I've trained myself a lot now to, because my partner, I mean, I think everybody does that to some degree, right? When you're hungry, you're not at your best. When you're tired, you're not at your best. Your brain actually can't physically function at the same level that it can when you've given it everything it needs physically. And yeah, so to some degree everyone's like impaired in one way or another when they're not taking care of themselves, right?
Right.
But when you can recognize those patterns, right? So now sometimes we just say that, hey, I think you're a bit grumpy right now because you haven't eaten in 7 hours and you need some food. Or he'll do that too. He'll like yell about something and then say, I think I'm hungry. And that's good. That's progress too, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't all go away right away, but if you can know when you're doing it and why, that's the first step.
Absolutely.
What else did we have here? That's a very, very good... I like that little development on this thought. Actually, it keeps going, doesn't it?
He does.
He talks about applying this to other methods of communication and not just speech, but that, like, writing a letter is a form of speech. And that if you're writing a letter, like, you have to be very mindful of what you're saying so that you're not causing harm. That your letter has to water the seeds of transformation in the other person and stir something in his heart if it is to be called right speech.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's... I really liked how that was worded. I don't think that people often consider communication... Maybe we think about transformation, but to stir something in the other person's heart is maybe something that gets lost a lot. And I like to see it worded in that way. Like, you should be moving the other person. They should really feel what you're trying to tell them if you're to do it right.
Yeah.
But once you mail it, you can't get it back. So read it carefully several times before sending. Like, when you speak, you can't take it back either.
But you can at least say, "Oops, I meant to say this."
Oops. It is why I like our modern world a little bit. I like the typey types. I like the Discord and the emails. Can reread things. I can even link things. Like, if you'll reference this article, I am referring to a lot of things in this.
Yeah.
I won't lie. I've actually communicated with my partner that way so many times. Like, I'm gonna go put this in an email. And
Oh, wow.
We'll link to articles to each other. Oh my gosh, you have no idea.
I mean, I'm not
It
surprised,
works.
but then...
You're like, this is my background knowledge I'm using to reference this argument. Please see the attachment.
That's delightful.
It sounds funny, but I actually think that's a really good thing because it eliminates, like, if you're seeing that this background information I have is something the other person lacks. And when I say this, they're not going to understand what I'm actually meaning by using these words. But if they were to read this, then they know why I used these words. Then that's actually a more effective communication. That's a good thing. It might seem silly because it sounds like something we do, for work, but
Well, it's just awkward in like talking conversation. Be like, I need you to stop talking for 10 minutes and read this article, and then we'll keep going.
Gregory seems like the perfect person for that, though.
Oh, we'll totally Google stuff in the middle of a conversation. Like, oh, I'm not 100% on that. Please allow me to double check my references before continuing.
Yeah,
I
man,
think
cite
that's
your
great.
sources.
Gotta check my sources. Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me double check that statistic. One moment. I do like the idea of how he really emphasizes in that next page the beginning of understanding not only relieving suffering for the other person, but the compassion that it brings up in you, and that overall this compassion has the capacity to really heal yourself and others. Yep, you highlighted it. And then down below that, he says, the moment compassion is born in you, you feel better already. And I like him diving into this because I don't feel like he's saying, boom, you're fixed. But so much is this idea that even little steps are victories.
Mm-hmm.
You've begun to feel better. You've begun this process of healing, and it doesn't feel like I've failed if I haven't completely solved my problems, but that if I am doing these things and working towards them, each little day that I'm better is a little victory in itself. He doesn't put it that way, and maybe that's a wrong way to approach it, but that's kind of the feeling I get from reading his writing.
Hey, Dad, if it helps you, that's a perfect way of getting that interpretation.
Yeah, I can agree with it. Like, I think he's very much about, this is an ongoing process. I mean, the other chapter where he said, we are all just part-time Buddhas. Like, we are not, like, the Buddha is a Buddha all the time and does all of these things simultaneously at all moments.
Yeah.
We don't do that. We're just part-time Buddhas, and it's okay if you don't get everything right every time, and it's okay if you just see it like baby steps, but it's still better. If you can do this one thing, already you'll see the progress. You'll see that there's a difference and that it's the right way. And if you do that, then there's another step, and then there's another step, and then there's another step.
Mm-hmm.
And it just keeps going, and it's very, very encouraging.
I was feeling very discouraged myself about a few days ago, and one of my coworkers said that what they really liked was that I'm always seeking improvement. And I think that if you can be somebody seeking improvement, it really does help a lot. Because even if you're not amazing at whatever it is today, you can be a little better tomorrow.
Right. I mean, as long as you stay open, you can keep growing. And I think that's far more important than, look how much I've accomplished or all of the skills I've accumulated.
Right.
Someone that is unskilled but still open and learning, I think, has a lot more going on than someone who thinks they've figured it out and stopped trying.
Well, but if they did figure it out, they wouldn't stop trying, right? It's
Exactly.
ongoing. Like
Exactly.
you have, even if you made it and you did it, you have to keep doing it. You can't stop.
Yeah.
I
Somewhat
can't
relatable.
imagine.
Somewhat relatable.
Mm-hmm.
I had some epiphanous moments quite a few years ago, and I'm like, oh, this is it. And then I had that moment of like, if I keep going, I'm going to lose context for the rest of humanity. I'm going to stop here.
Wild.
And then I fell back into it, and it's just like, all right, well, that was probably not the right choice.
Aw.
Yeah. It's scary though. Like, you get to a certain point, and it's either you feel like you're the weird one, or everyone else is insane.
What do you mean you don't
And
understand, like, extending compassion and kindness to everyone? That's weird. What? No.
I don't really see it like. I mean, obviously there are differences between different kinds of people and the way that people approach things and all of that, but the farther I get along this path, the more I think of it as, there are a lot of people who are essentially infantile in this way. They aren't different. They're just a far earlier version, right? Like maybe you haven't been at that level since you were 3 years old, but somebody else never got past it because
right.
of the environment they were in and whatever, it fell to the wayside, or they were around other people who had a very underdeveloped sense of whatever particular area, and they had nobody to teach them how to improve on it, and so they just haven't grown in that particular area. And usually it's not across the board, right? Normally most people don't have like a 3-year-old understanding of everything. They're like a 3-year-old in one area, but then they could be more advanced in some other area that they have more experience in, right? And different things that they've paid more attention to. They might be very good at consoling others,
Mm-hmm.
but very bad at recognizing their own emotions and controlling the behaviors that they have in their own life when they're, when it's more
Call me out
personal.
like that.
They're calling you out.
Yeah.
But I think that's everybody. So we have only so much time, and until we recognize and look in ourselves and see those things, and I think, like, for me too, I couple this with like psychology and learning different types of like therapy, counseling, all of that, and to see why is it that way. And when you see patterns in life, and okay, what happened to me when I was younger, or what didn't happen that made me like this and somebody else not like that? Why am I better at this thing? Why am I worse at this thing? Or even things that without a judgment of better or worse, but there are things like lately I've been trying to go through, like, it was a big, I guess you call it a New Year's resolution, kind of like, okay, this year I'm going to try to buy less stuff because I don't need it. And I don't think that I ever have been really that bad about just like frivolous spending in general to begin with, but I still find myself surrounded by like a lot of things in my house, like clutter, that maybe I don't use some of these things, or I don't need as many of them as I have, and maybe only one or two would suffice, And so it was a big thing for me this year to try to simplify my home, because this is the environment I spend even more time in now that I'm working at home, and the outside often, if the outside is cluttered, the inside is harder to keep uncluttered, right? My mind will
Absolutely.
not be as clear. And also my partner, who he isn't actively practicing these things, and he's not as far along on that path, and he struggles a lot with that, where the environment is going in and cluttering his mind, and it's making it even harder for him to be mindful and to do these kinds of things. And that was something I recognized as, okay, if I can accomplish this, maybe it can help make that environment that helps everybody, and just be
Yeah.
easier in general, like easier on my body to keep it clean and all that. And as I'm now going through recently after this construction we've had in our house, and I've had to move things around so that it didn't get all dusty, and now I'm putting it back, and I'm going, okay, I should go through everything and see what do I actually need, and what's actually useful for me to have, what can we get rid of, what would I replace it if I lost it, if it, if there was a fire, would I replace this thing, and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and seeing how much we don't actually need, but then I have this I don't even want to say an attachment to the item. I find in myself I have like a anxiety about what I would do, or like I might need these things, because in the past I've had situations where I didn't have enough money to replace anything, and
Yeah. Poverty
seeing,
brain.
yeah, seeing where, okay, that's where that came from. It's something that's easier for somebody else because they didn't have that experience. And I've basically been conditioned that you're not going to be, like, you have what you have, and that's it. So you got to take care of it. And I literally have clothes from when I was 12.
Oh no.
Like, I have clothes in my closet that are 20 years old.
Wow.
I'm
I
not.
don't,
I've got some that are like 10 years old, so I kind of feel you on that one.
yeah. And maybe, too, I mean, other people wouldn't have that because I'm the same size I was when I was 12,
Yeah.
but other people
Alas.
usually aren't. Um, that's when I stopped growing. But like, it's to recognize that, to see that in myself, this is how I got to be this way. And now I can see, okay, what steps do I take so I don't have that mentality? Is it serving me? Is it not serving me? How can I say again, hello, habit energy, and
Mm-hmm.
and take control of that, and hopefully make life better by being able to actually separate myself from that kind of tendency and not just, yeah, something that somebody else never even developed in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
They're way past that. They're way beyond that. It's not an issue, non-issue, but for me it's an issue. And you know things like that, just seeing everybody's on a different point in the path, but we all also have like 100 different I don't know, stats. We're all on stat progression. We have
I love
100
that.
different ones.
Yeah.
And some people have focused in one area, and some people didn't even bother opening the menu to see that those were stats that existed at all.
Right. Right. Fair enough. Fair enough.
But then they might be surprised. Huh, I have an 87 on that. Cool.
Nice.
Nice. Ooh,
Um.
no, I'm only a 6 on this other one, though.
Tangentially on the next page, because it's like 12. We've almost been talking an hour. Or no, I guess it hasn't been an hour. Oh, it's only been 38 minutes. Anyway, I'm sorry.
No, we're fine.
On this next page, I thought it was really interesting, and I would be interested to hear your thoughts on it. He says, "We do not have the right just to express our own suffering if it brings suffering to others."
Yes, I highlighted that too.
And I thought that was really interesting, and it reminds me quite a bit of uh, Teachers Lounge gossip.
Mm-hmm.
That's what immediately came to my mind. Because I've heard, I'm a listener at work, and I gather quite a bit of intel just walking around the building and existing in spaces. And I don't know if they don't care that I'm there or don't realize that I am, but I hear a lot of things. And and so one of the things that's been coming up for a couple of people is how they feel that everybody's gossiping all the time in the staff lounge, and it's gotten really kind of toxic, which from what I've heard, yes it has. And the sense of, at what point do we need to moderate ourselves and our expressions of frustration because it's bringing suffering to those around us.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think actually earlier when he was saying something about if we wait, let me see if I can find it on my tablet. If we are speaking like in a harsh way like even if we're speaking the truth but we're not saying it in a compassionate way,
Mm-hmm.
that's not right speech,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
and that it's not okay. It doesn't matter if that's your truth, but if you're expressing it in this way where it's hurting other people, then it's not right speech, and that's not what we should be doing, and that's not what we should be striving for, and it's not enough to just speak your mind. You need to go through all of this and make sure that you have right view and right thinking and being mindful of the specific words that we're choosing so that we don't cause harm and increase the suffering of others, because right speech is supposed to decrease the suffering of others and ourselves, and that's not what's going to happen if people are gossiping or insulting other people or something, right?
I mean,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Trying to think of any possible world where that weren't true, but no.
Actually, it's surprising. I don't think he put it in here, but isn't there like a 4 types of speech that you should avoid? Like,
Uh,
what is it called? It's like,
the Four
no.
Gates? No,
Oh no, Max, you're
might
supposed
be.
to know.
I know. I've been slacking.
um, false speech. This is just the even more simplified version of right speech, I guess. But false speech, slander, harsh speech, and idle chatter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he didn't specifically say it in that way. I guess he did summarize it somewhat.
I think he
In
just put
other
it a
ways,
little
but
differently there at the
yeah,
beginning.
I usually hear it with that kind of wording. But yeah, if we're doing all of these things, well, that's the opposite of right speech. And it sounds like that's kind of what the teachers are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe all of them. I don't know.
Well, and
Maybe they're not false, but
I think they've just, yeah, I think it's not false. They've just reached a level of burnout where they keep repeating certain thought processes. And the unfortunate reality is that those thought processes are watering the seeds of exhaustion and frustration. You know, they're not renewing themselves in any way with this conversation. It's not uplifting. It's not giving strength to them or the people around them. And so it is a frustrating place to be in.
yeah. It sounds very much like when I worked in the bank. Same kind of environment, and it is incredibly toxic. And then even if somebody new comes in, they can't rejuvenate it because the environment's so entrenched in that attitude.
Yeah.
Nobody, like, and in reality, everybody working together could make it better, and it wouldn't be like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, they're putting their energy into these, like, toxic processes and sort of, like, quietly spreading and letting the poison seep through all of the foundation. That's actually the last bit that I highlighted for the chapter, too.
I did highlight a bit on that next to last page where he says, if we listen out of the silence of our mind, every bird's song and every whistling of the pine trees in the wind will speak to us. So it was kind of just a nice little uplifting thing. It felt very, aw, yeah.
Yes, this bit here.
Yeah. Just kind of a sweet little bonus of mindfulness, I think. Like when you can quiet everything else and really be in the moment, listen with compassion and openness, everything kind of in the natural world will help re-energize you. I'm really looking forward to my move coming up when I get out of this city that I find difficult to be very open about being inside of. And I will be near trees again. And I can go on walks near a tree instead of garbage.
Oh no. I would be in that same boat if it weren't for the fact of there's a park literally right behind my house.
That is
So
convenient.
The park
Yeah,
near my
I'm in the
house is
city.
full of garbage.
This park is small, thankfully, so it's not too full of garbage. There's a little garbage,
Small
but
garbage.
not much. Yeah, it's definitely seeing that that's environment does. You're
It
living in
is.
an environment where people don't care about the environment that
It's
they're living
exhausting. And I try to be empathetic because the reality is nobody's taught them how to love the space they're in and make it into a lovely space. But there's something that dies inside of me every time I see someone toss garbage out of their car or just drop it on the ground.
in. But doesn't that come to from people feeling like the things they have aren't really theirs? It doesn't belong to them in any way, and so it's just gonna like that. It's like impermanence, but in a bad kind of way. Like nothing I
Yeah.
have is gonna stay, and so why should I care?
I think additionally it's a sense of that if no one else cares, then why should I bother? Right? And so everyone has that attitude, so no one cares.
Yeah, the standard, like in neighborhoods where nobody keeps up their house and everything gets
Yes.
like, dilapidated and
There's
falling
no
apart.
there's but that's a whole other conversation of like sometimes peer pressure is good, kids.
No, but it's environmental. Like that in the chapter we read a few weeks, was it a couple weeks ago or something, where we are talking about like the guy who was having trouble quitting smoking, and then he went to visit a monastery and like nobody was smoking, so he's just like, I guess I don't have to smoke either. Like, why should I waste time smoking when no one else is doing that and miss out on all this other stuff that they're doing? And like, I guess I don't really need that. And it was easier to stop when everybody else was spending their time on something else, you know, just to go with them.
Mhm.
And being mindful of that kind of like that's the same thing, right? It's just the opposite thing. It's that everyone's doing bad things, and so I might as well do the bad thing instead of surrounding yourself with people who do care and are putting in effort to something that everyone kind of shares. Is it everyone's or no one's?
Mm-hmm.
Right. There's got to be a sense of mutual responsibility, but that's so hard to cultivate, especially in our society where we're all very individualistic, or at least taught to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, the culture is
Yeah.
right.
Right.
The
Right.
culture is individualistic versus collectivist. That we could definitely do more. Maybe that's natural extension of like a large.
But that's
larger
communism. Oh.
Well, communism can't do anything about that either, right? Even if you change the government, it doesn't change the culture.
Oh, I mean, there's indoctrination and all that kind of stuff, so maybe, but like not on a real level.
Mm-hmm. I just as a final little note on this chapter, words and thoughts can kill.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we cannot support acts of killing. If you have a
The
job
drama.
in which telling the truth is impossible, you may have to change jobs. Anyway, I thought it was a delightful end of that chapter.
Is it swinging into right livelihood with that?
I think so, probably. So he ties it. I don't know that Are we gonna talk about the next chapter today, chapter 13? Or
I mean, we can, or we can skip it because of time, or whatever. Either way, I mean, if no one else read it, then we can just do it for next time, or
yeah,
I
we can read it
summarize
next time. But to let you know, Max, the next chapter is right action.
Ah,
And
okay.
so I think that perhaps ties in very nicely together as you start here with the thoughts and then jump in on action in the next bit.
Yeah, that follows.
Is this a footnote? It kind of looks like maybe.
It might be, but I read them regardless.
Oh yeah, I do too. I just think that maybe it wasn't actually meant to be the end of the chapter, but the whether we say something kind or respond too hastily, we hear what we are saying, maybe was the end of the chapter, actually. And this was like an aside in reference to... I don't know what D826 means.
As far as I can tell, there's a ton of references. Like the links will take you to weird references in the end of the book, and then all that blue text will. And
Yeah.
then I don't know if D826 might be like maybe a reference to a stanza of some flavor.
Maybe he
Perhaps?
referenced that same text somewhere earlier, and this is just like, oh yeah, this guy's book.
Yeah. And thoughts.